Welcome, everybody, to the big show, and a big shout out to Carolyn today, who I love meeting Redacted viewers, and to the millions of you who watch this show. If you ever see us out and about, please come up and say hi. And I love the other day we were out, and Mario came up to us, and then today Carolyn came up and said hello, and loves watching the show. She was from Sweden, and we were talking all about the EU and the craziness of border invasions and what's going on. So great conversation, and I love seeing people who are enlightened, who are open-minded, who are challenging the narrative. She says she's like, oh, my friends, she's like, they can't stand it because I'm challenging the narrative. I drive them up the wall. I'm like, keep driving people up the wall. That's the only way we can make a change, is like, share this show with your friends on Facebook or whatever and rile them up.
Us wall drivers, we have to stick together. So
rile people up.
Let us know when you see us in real life. We like that kind of stuff.
We have a busy show for you on this Monday, and we have a daily newsletter. Yes, during the summer with the kids home from school, it's a little crazy, but we still pump out the daily newsletter, and Natalie writes it. She puts a lot of hard work into it, and we try to really bring a lot of value to your morning when you're first waking up in the morning over your cup of coffee. We publish it at about 7 a.m. Eastern time, and it's chock full of really good stories, but you can read it in about 5 or 10 minutes. After I published the newsletter today, like a few minutes later, I got the newsletter because I published it, and then I reread it. I'm like, hey, you know what? This is a really good newsletter. I'm like,
stuff.
These redacted people.
Yeah.
No, anyway, it's a good newsletter, and it's again, it's got great information in it. You can find about 4 or 5 of the big stories of the day in the newsletter, and it's very easy to sign up. Just go to redacted.inc. Redacted.inc is the place to sign up.
There's so much there in the newsletter. Even today, I was vacillating between doing that fake meat story that was in the newsletter today in the show. Maybe we'll take that one on tomorrow. This push to replace meat, lab-grown meat.
Yeah, the idea that it's going to save the environment. In fact, the opposite is true.
Right. And so maybe we'll touch on that one tomorrow, because that one also very much blew my mind. But we're busy, guys, because we don't have a show on Friday. We were off the weekend, so we got stuff to talk about. We got to catch each other up.
So good to see all of you guys. Letting us know, where you guys are joining us from here in the chat. Nice to see everyone. Letting us know whether you're on Rumble, on YouTube. Let us know how you're doing. Great to see the tens of thousands of you joining us live on Rumble tonight, as well as YouTube. So nice to see everyone.
And how's your summer going? Today's the last day of July, so hope it's going well. I have 3 kids with swimmer's ear. 3. Every single ear. Yes,
let me check that ear. Let me check that ear.
That's the summer. That's the dog days of summer.
All right, let's get into the news, shall we? Let's talk about what's going on in Russia. Here's the word today. Russia can no longer protect itself from war. Now, those aren't my words. Those are the words of the British Intelligence Service, which just issued this alert this morning. And here it is from the intelligence update from the UK. I love how they post an update. Like, here's our intelligence that we've gathered over the past week or so.
Way to catch up.
So there at the bottom of your screen, you'll notice the increased chance of being compelled to fight drone attacks on Moscow, exceptional level of domestic repression, and the recent Wagner mutiny combined to highlight the Russian state's failure to insulate the population from war. So in other words, Moscow, according to the UK, is vulnerable to terrorist attacks. Civilians are vulnerable in the heart of Russia. Putin is vulnerable. He's increasing the draft for conscription. So more men of military age can be drafted much more quickly. That's what the UK intelligence service is saying. Mm-hmm. Putin is ramping up for something big, according to the UK intelligence service. Put another way, we are sitting on the verge of nuclear war after another round of NATO-backed drone strikes hit the heart of Moscow overnight. Here's video of this. Take a look. So just seeing the scenery here, and just looking at the skyline of Moscow, and whoa, what the?
Oh.
Hitting apartment complexes. Hitting apartment complexes. Yeah. So the world is on the verge of nuclear war, and NATO seems hell-bent on making it actually happen. This weekend, Victoria Nuland was promoted inside the Biden administration. So Victoria Nuland got a big promotion this weekend.
Well, she's been working on this war for almost a decade.
Yeah.
And that was a big project. When you're handed the project of go start a war with Russia over Ukraine, that was a long one.
Yeah.
She's really been working hard at that.
No, she's the warmonger in chief. So Victoria Nuland, good job there. So she got promoted. And she, I'm reminded of this when she said, we need to be ready that Putin can use tactical nuclear weapons. You remember this? So this is just a few months ago, she said this. And the she-devil herself admitted we need to be concerned. Why would we be? It's almost like she was ready for it. It's almost like she had an awareness that this was going to happen. Like that Putin's response eventually is going to be, he's going to be so backed into a corner from all of the NATO bullying that this is going to happen.
We did know this. Again, she's been working on this since 2014.
Yeah.
Literally the strings were pull Ukraine, get war with Russia. This was, again, if you were to just put on someone's agenda, go start a war over this, that's what she's been working on. And we know she doesn't give a crap about Europe and how that plays out. There was even leaked tapes where she said, F the rest of Europe, right? So there is an agenda. It has nothing to do with anyone living on the European continent. Go ahead, David. I'm sorry.
Well, and I just checked my watch, my history watch, and it shows that there's only been one country that's ever actually used nuclear weapons. And you know who that was?
Poland.
Us.
Oh, us?
You did that? David,
Us.
don't
You
do
did
that
that?
anymore. You just pointed to yourself.
Sorry.
Eritrea? Eritrea? So, yeah, we're getting dangerously close to this. And you have to think, well, no, they would never do this. But if you really if you lay it out, and this is exactly what Dmitry Medvedev just said this morning, former Russian president Dmitry Medvedev has warned that there is simply no other way out. There he is with Putin. And he threatened a nuclear response by Russia. Basically what he's saying is if NATO continues to do this, and if NATO tries to have a victory, like a Ukrainian victory, which would mean attacks on Moscow and taking over Crimea and taking all of this land back, that's a non-starter. That means that a nuclear response would be the response. That's what Medvedev is saying. There's no other way out, he says. Do you know what they're playing with here? The attacks are relentless, by the way. Over the past 24 hours, dozens upon dozens of increased drone attacks inside of Russia. Here's just some remnants of these apartment complexes
that have been happening for weeks. So imagine the U.S. response if this had been hitting buildings in Manhattan constantly, right?
Oh, yeah.
And this has been happening not just for days, but for weeks. What would the United States have been doing at this point? You can only imagine, right? If they were coming from outside of the country and we knew it from, say, Canada or Mexico or anywhere in the Caribbean, we would have done something by now. And so we are dangerously close to a response that does not involve just hitting Ukrainian infrastructure.
Friend of the show, Douglas McGregor, says Putin will not stand by as this happens. And now NATO is actively discussing war with Russia. Watch.
The second part, though, is very, very important. And that is that the members are now supposedly openly discussing war plans against Russia. Now, this kind of thing is extremely sensitive, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
You can imagine the impact on Moscow. Thus far, Putin has held 300,000 troops in reserve, hoping that he doesn't have to commit them because he's always worried about NATO intervention. And at the same time, you have the Poles and Lithuanians who are saying, well, we're going to go in regardless of what the NATO alliance says. And if we go in, we're not really going to drag NATO with us. The problem with that, of course, is that they're part of NATO. And if they do go in, the Russians will treat them as a NATO Trojan horse and they will attack. Mm-hmm. So we're really on the path to war. And I think we ought to start asking some hard questions of this man who's 80 years old, who has trouble finding his way off the stage, about what he's actually doing. I mean, we're in the hands of a man who is not entirely mentally stable.
Moscow said it had brought down 3 Ukrainian drones early on Sunday that had been trying to attack the capital. It also claimed forces had thwarted a Ukrainian attempt to attack Russian Crimea with 25 drones overnight. And Zelensky says war is now coming to Russia. These are the words that he just released. Watch.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці і українки. Сьогодні працюємо у Франківську на Прикарпатті. Мав честь відвідати наших воїнів, які проходять лікування після поранень. Подякував їм за захист держави, за силу. Дякую вам за шеврони, хлопці. Подякував нашим лікарям, медичним сестричкам. Пишаємось нашими медиками, усіма, хто рятує життя. Провели у Франківську засідання Конгресу місцевих та регіональних влад України. Наші громади, урядовці, представники Сил оборони та безпеки, партнери України, які співпрацюють з Конгресом, була дуже змістовна розмова. Перше – це енергетика, підготовка до зими. Російська агресія зазнала банкрутства на полі бою. Сьогодні вже 522-й день, як триває так звана спеціальна воєнна операція, яку російське керівництво розраховувало на тиждень-два. Україна стає міцніше, поступово війна повертається на територію Росії, де її...
So, just to paraphrase, he was talking with troops, and he says that that Russia is failing, Russia is growing weaker, Ukraine is getting stronger, and war is now arriving on the doorsteps of Russia.
Okay, well, somebody in Ukraine is getting stronger, and that guy you were just looking at, because he last week declared that the state of emergency will be extended into October, so he cannot face re-election. He's canceled the election. So imagine this. You live in Ukraine. You have a president who refuses to talk peace and continues to grab people off the street and throw them in front of the battle lines to retake territory that does not want to be a part of Ukraine. So every family now is eligible for someone there to be thrown into the line of fire and die. And you cannot vote this person out because he's decided we don't have elections any longer. So while the United States is busy telling other countries like Cambodia that you're not having a fair and democratic election, we are allowing Zelensky a dictatorship,
Right.
where people will continue to die as a result. And you are utterly powerless as a Ukrainian to do anything about it. You can't vote him out now. No choice.
That's what democracies do, is cancel elections, right, David?
I was going to say, yeah, that's what we're protecting. Like, everybody knows why we're in Ukraine. It's because we're protecting democracy and American values.
Right. Yeah. And what better way to celebrate democracy than to cancel elections?
I find that just so terrifying. At least in the United States, you have this idea that there may be a peace candidate on the way behind Joe Biden, this sort of pipe dream, right? In Ukraine, you've got nothing. And you know that your male family members have a very high likelihood of being dragged into this.
Yeah.
I find that just terrifying. And that's what we stand for when America stands for her principles.
Well, this morning, the Zelensky government, see how this lands with you guys watching right now. Let us know in the chat what you think about this. So this morning, the Zelensky government created a video getting ready for the Ukrainian Independence Day on August 24th. They released this video this morning showing the attacks that they have planned for August 24th. Yes, they made a movie about it. Watch.
I see what you did there.
So mark the date on your calendar.
When your counteroffensive fails, you animate it.
Right. Yeah, and you make it into a propaganda movie for your Independence Day on August 11th. It's just like a fleet of drones that are going to attack. That's how you celebrate Independence Day. So nuclear war. So this is your tax dollars hard at work being used by NATO to foment a nuclear war. This weekend, all the news shows, you would have thought, hey, Sunday shows, all weekend they would have been covering all these latest developments, these attacks in Moscow, the response, the NATO ramping up of weapons, sending additional military packages to Ukraine, all of it. What coverage? Instead, the media is pushing the World Economic Forum agenda. This is literally this weekend. Instead of covering what's going on the verge of nuclear war, this is what they're covering.
We all know how important insects are for the environment, but climate researchers say bugs could be a game changer in the fight to protect the planet in ways you may not have imagined. Tina Kraus has the story from London.
Adding some insects to the mix is customary in the kitchen in some parts of the world. Now climate experts think that protein-packed pests could offer a real solution to the global food crisis.
Yeah, so get your bugs in your food. That's what CBS is spending 4 minutes of airtime covering, and then nothing on the war, no coverage of this, no coverage of moving towards nuclear Armageddon. So where is President Biden while all of this is unfolding, by the way? Oh, here he is. He's at the beach. He's going to be spending the next 9 days there in Delaware. They're extending the vacation 9 more days. Well, it's 10 days actually of today, so he's got 10 full days.
He's spending 9 days right there?
Yeah, I guess just in that one spot. He'll just be asleep in that one spot, you know, for the next 9 days. That's with Jill just hanging out on the beach. You know, it's unbelievable, sort of just like the southern border is just being flooded with people. We had a record number of people pour across the border in June, up 186%.
And a record number of fentanyl. Yeah,
a record number of fentanyl that just came across, and a record number of southern border invasions, 144,000 over the past month. Michael Tracy said this, I like this. He said, drone strikes raining down on Moscow with regularity now is a perfectly foreseeable and intentional byproduct of long-standing U.S. policy aims in Ukraine to escalate and expand the warfare. There's nothing inadvertent or unexpected about this, he says. It's a willful U.S. policy choice. Yeah, it's exactly right. It's exactly what is happening right now, because pushing towards nuclear war is all part of the plan. That's exactly what NATO wants. And Antony Blinken amazingly had this to say this weekend. Blinken said that nuclear war, the threat is no worse than climate change. Basically, nuclear Armageddon is on the same path as climate change.
I mean, by that logic, I say, okay, leave me alone about gas stoves then, because you're choosing one, I'm choosing the other.
Yeah. Well, and what's funny is, you know, they want this. I mean, I think they really, really want this. You've heard them talking about like darkening the sun, you know, trying to blot out the only other way besides what we saw with these massive volcanoes that we lost an entire summer in the year 1816 is with nuclear fallout. And that's the only other time when you have these particulates in the air of that dense, that size and scope that could literally change the climate so effectively, which is to bring the temperature down. And these guys want this to happen. So it's like they're on board with it. They're like, okay, so the side effect in all of this is nuclear war in Ukraine. Fine. We've already destroyed that country anyway. Plus, it'll help our climate. It'll bring the temperature down if we have nuclear fallout. That's what Antony Blinken says. And he doubled down on it this weekend. No
worse than... I really can't follow the logic. Like, he wants us to just be afraid of both, or...
I don't know. What do you try to put logic? I literally watched multiple Biden administration officials give speeches over the weekend, from Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas to Antony Blinken to seeing what Victoria Nuland is saying and concerned about the BRICS nations. They're all nuts. They're literally, I watched a Kamala Harris speech today, and it was like a giant word salad. It was like a big, giant kale green salad. I had no idea what the hell she was talking about. These are the people running our country. These are the people running our country right now. Biden's out to lunch, he's at the beach, and all of these people make no friggin' sense. So these are our elected leaders right now. Hopefully we can vote these people out. At least we will have an election, hopefully, in 2024. Although, did you see Roseanne Barr? Roseanne Barr, did you see what she said today? She said she doesn't see a 2024 election even happening in the United States.
I do not want to hear that.
She said it's going to be so crazy. She says she doesn't even think we're going to actually have a normal, like an actual election in 2024.
I mean, it's possible, because if Russia does technically declare war, or we declare war, then he can stay in.
Right. He could declare martial law, or you could literally go into the War Powers Act, which then, takes him out of the occasion, and then you have an entire emergency setup right now, the continuity of government structure in the United States. So anyways, guys, let us know your thoughts on this in the comments below. We'll take some of your super chats here in a second. We've got more news to get to. We're going to talk about the Africa-Russia summit and the way the mainstream media, Mike Jones is going to be joining us from Earl Grey. because he was there in St. Petersburg, and the Western media totally, spun all of these African leaders and ambassadors who flew in and were meeting inside of Russia about a future sort of multipolar order, shattering this unipolar order. The way the Western media was spinning it was hilarious. So we'll talk to Mike here in a moment.
The way they were spinning it was ostrich syndrome.
Yeah.
Doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Right.
We're also going to talk about Julian Assange and what Australia just said about that. Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.